I lead a fairly simple life, centered around fitness, health, and now, unexpectedly, a dash of drama. At 29, I balance my time between being a fitness trainer and managing my health blog. This routine led me to meet Bobby at a sports center, sparking a connection that blossomed into a significant relationship. Bobby has an undeniable charm, and soon we found ourselves in a passionate romance. One particularly warm summer day marked a significant moment. I was to meet Bobby's family for the first time. I opted for a modest knee-length dress with short sleeves, suitable for the heat, yet it unwittingly became a point of contention. Bobby had warned me his family was somewhat traditional, especially his mother, Cynthia, who he described with a hint of caution. Her strong opinions were not to be taken personally, he advised. Upon our arrival at their home, we were warmly greeted by Dylan, Bobby's younger brother, whose friendly demeanor eased my nerves. Then came Cynthia. The atmosphere seemed to cool instantly as her gaze lingered critically over me, focusing sharply on my bare arms. Her first words to me were about my choice of attire, questioning its boldness for such an occasion. I was taken aback, but managed to explain my choice, citing the summer heat and my preference for comfort, which only met with her disdainful response on the importance of first impressions. Bobby attempted to defuse the tension, reassuring his mother that my dress was perfectly fine given the hot weather. However, Cynthia remained unyielded, setting a strained tone for dinner. Throughout the meal, Dylan tried to keep the conversation light, for which I was grateful, while Bobby's supportive glances tried to comfort me, but Cynthia's initial remarks cast a shadow over the evening. Later, while assisting with the dishes, Cynthia confronted me, expressing her concerns over Bobby potentially making a mistake. Shocked, I affirmed my sincere love for Bobby and my intentions, which she skeptically acknowledged, leaving us with a pensive, "Time will tell." The car ride home was somber. Bobby apologized for his mother's behavior, acknowledging her overprotectiveness. I expressed my concerns about the future dynamics within the family, hinting at the challenges ahead, especially with our wedding planning already underway. We immersed ourselves in preparations, choosing decorations and tasting cakes. I even found a gorgeous dress, slightly bold but elegant. Yet, when Cynthia saw it, her reaction was predictably critical, suggesting it was more suited to a beach party than a wedding. Trying to keep the mood light, I explained it was simply modern and appropriate for the expected warm weather. The journey with Cynthia was proving to be as complex as the lace on my wedding dress, but I remained hopeful that with time, she would see my true intentions and the love I had for Bobby. My life is usually about simple pleasures and routines, focusing primarily on fitness and health. At 29, I've been balancing my job as a fitness trainer with running my health blog. It was through this fitness-focused lifestyle that I met Bobby, whose infectious energy quickly spiraled into a whirlwind romance. However, along with love came unexpected drama, starting with our first encounter with his family. On a scorching summer day, I wore a simple knee-length dress to meet Bobby's family, hoping to make a good impression. However, my choice of attire instantly unsettled his mother, Cynthia, who made no effort to hide her disapproval. Bobby held my hand, signaling me to avoid confrontation, even as Cynthia muttered about tradition and decency before storming off. If a mere dress could cause such a stir, I worried about what challenges lay ahead. After the initial clash, I immersed myself more in my work and blog, which served as my haven, a place where I felt in control and could express my passion for fitness and health. Little did I know, even this sanctuary would soon become a battleground. One evening, as Bobby and I relaxed, he showed me troubling comments on my Instagram. Cynthia had been scrutinizing the comments, particularly the flirty ones, and was spreading rumors about my fidelity. Frustrated, I listened as Bobby suggested maybe limiting who could comment on my posts to prevent further issues. This well-meaning proposal felt like a blow to my independence. I refused to censor my social life just because his mother misinterpreted my interactions. As if to confirm my fears, the situation escalated when Dylan, Bobby's brother, began giving me rides home from work due to our conveniently close workplaces. Innocent as it was, Cynthia saw it as an opportunity to insinuate an affair. During a tense family dinner, She made veiled comments about Dylan being my chauffeur, her insinuations clear and hurtful. Bobby and Dylan both reacted sharply, defending me, which only heightened the conflict. The drive home that evening was painfully quiet, with the weight of Cynthia's accusations hanging heavily between us. I was astounded by her willingness to twist Dylan's kindness into something sinister. The ongoing drama with Cynthia reached a breaking point when she accused me of inappropriate behavior simply because Dylan gave me a few rides home. Exhausted and at my limit, I made it clear to Bobby, Cynthia was no longer welcome in our home. I couldn't tolerate her toxicity any longer. This decision might as well have been a declaration of war, as Cynthia reacted vehemently to the news of her ban. This ongoing battle with Cynthia put a strain not just on my relationship with Bobby, but on my peace of mind. Determined to protect our happiness and maintain my integrity, I stood firm in my decision, hoping that with time, boundaries would bring some much-needed peace and understanding within the family dynamics. Honestly, I was exhausted from dealing with Cynthia's relentless criticism and accusations. Yet, nothing prepared me for the upheaval that followed my pregnancy announcement. The initial joy quickly soured when Cynthia insinuated to Bobby that the child could belong to anyone, given the many men at my gym. This poisonous suggestion started to seep into Bobby's trust, visibly shaking the foundation of our relationship. I saw the doubt cloud his eyes, a betrayal that felt like a physical blow. Our once strong connection was fraying, eaten away by silent suspicions that grew each day. One night, after eavesdropping on another unsettling phone call between Bobby and his mother, I confronted him. My voice was sharp, lined with hurt and anger, as I demanded to know if he truly doubted my fidelity and the paternity of our child. Bobby appeared torn, a mere shadow of the man I loved. He admitted his confusion, influenced by his mother's manipulative theories. I was dumbfounded by his inability to defend our relationship against her words. The atmosphere at home grew, increasingly strained. Our conversations became terse, and the joy of expecting our baby was overshadowed by a heavy cloud of suspicion. When our son was born, his fair hair and bright blue eyes brought a fleeting hope that perhaps this visual bond might mend the rifts. However, as he grew, his features only fueled Cynthia's fire since Bobby and I were both brunettes. Desperate, I showed Cynthia and Bobby old childhood photos of myself, also fair-haired and blue-eyed, hoping to illustrate the innocent genetics at play. Cynthia dismissed this with skepticism, further complicating matters by pointing out that Dylan, who is blonde, didn't help dispel her doubts. The tension became unbearable and exploded publicly at our son's first birthday party. Cynthia, seizing the moment in front of all our guests, loudly demanded a DNA test to prove Bobby's paternity. The humiliation burned through me as I stood accused during the celebration. I countered her loudly, my voice thick with indignation, refusing to validate her paranoia with a test. But Bobby, to my dismay, supported the test. His voice was cold, his eyes hard with a resolution I hadn't seen before. He insisted that without the test, our marriage couldn't continue due to his eroded trust. I was stunned, hurt spiraling into despair, as I realized how deeply Cynthia's venom had poisoned our life together. This wasn't just about proving a point anymore. It was a fight for my family's future. In that painful moment, when Bobby asked me to leave our home, his voice didn't waver. He seemed unaffected by my disbelief and distress. He firmly believed that a DNA test was necessary to resolve the growing doubts fueled by his mother's incessant claims. As I packed our things, my hands trembled with a mixture of anger and sorrow, our baby boy looking on, unaware that his little world was falling apart. I had no choice but to go to the only sanctuary I knew, my mother's house. She greeted me with open arms, ready to fight my battles as soon as I crossed the threshold and collapsed into tears. She was furious, ready to confront Bobby herself, but I held her back. It wasn't the time for more confrontations. That night, as I lay awake, I replayed every moment of our relationship, trying to pinpoint when the man I loved had started to doubt everything so deeply. By the next day, word of the scandal had spread, turning our turmoil into community gossip. It felt like everyone knew about Cynthia's accusations, The whispers were everywhere, turning my frustration into a resolve to clear my name. Finally, I decided to confront the situation head-on. I called Bobby, my voice steady despite my shaking hands, and agreed to the DNA test. His calm response stung as if he had expected me to capitulate all along. At the clinic, my nerves were raw. To my surprise, Dylan was there too. Confusion and resentment bubbled up when Bobby mentioned that due to rumors, Dylan would also need to be tested. The very suggestion was absurd and insulting, further proving how little trust remained between us. Inside, the specialist explained that testing would be complicated due to the potential fathers being siblings, necessitating samples from all involved. As we gave our samples, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Dylan looked embarrassed, Bobby conflicted, and I was simply furious. At Cynthia for her malicious meddling, and at Bobby for allowing his mother's suspicions to overshadow our marriage. With the tests underway, the wait for the results was agonizing. I wasn't passive during this time. I reached out to someone who could help resolve this delicate situation, determined to restore some semblance of peace to our lives and hoping against hope that the results would silence the rumors and repair the damage to our family. The waiting was pure agony. The uncertainty of what lay ahead for me, my son, Bobby, and Dylan was daunting, but I clung to a thread of hope. I hoped that once the DNA test results were revealed, we could begin to move past this horrendous chapter in our lives. The tension in Cynthia's living room was almost tangible, like icy fingers clutching at my heart as we awaited the revelation of the results. My son, sensing the charged atmosphere, gripped my hand, his little face puzzled by the brewing storm. Cynthia, reveling in the role of the grand orchestrator, dramatically tore open the envelope, her anticipation for a scandal palpable. However, the moment she glimpsed the contents, her expression shifted from smug anticipation to visible disappointment. "The father is Bobby," she declared, her tone losing its usual bite. Bobby, who had been visibly tense, relaxed instantly, a self-satisfied smirk spreading across his face. He turned to me, his arrogance back in full swing. "Well, there you have it.
No harm done, right?
You can come back home now." His words ignited a fierce mix of disbelief and anger within me. I let out a bitter laugh. "Come back? After all this? You must be joking," I retorted, my voice dripping with incredulity. He seemed taken aback by my response. "But you're innocent, Marilyn. Isn't that what you wanted?" That's when I decided to reveal my hand. I pulled out the divorce papers I had been secretly holding onto. The room fell silent as I placed them on the table. Bobby's face drained of color, shifting from confident to utterly pale. "What's this?" "Why?" he stammered, disbelief coloring his words. "Divorce papers," I stated simply, the words tasting like liberation. I then presented photos, the undeniable proof of Bobby's infidelity, captured in vivid detail by a private detective I had hired. His facade crumbled as he babbled apologies, his earlier bravado disappearing completely. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Please, let's talk about this." "Talk," I scoffed, my voice icy. "You dragged my name through the mud, allowed your mother to accuse me of the worst, and all the while, you were the one cheating. There's nothing to talk about." Cynthia, her eagerness for drama now replaced by desperation, tried to intervene. "Now, dear, let's all calm down. We can fix this." "Fix this?" I cut her off sharply. "Your son's a cheat, and you're no better for stirring all this trouble based on lies." As I laid out the evidence of Bobby's betrayal for all to see, the room turned into a battleground of broken bonds and shattered illusions. Cynthia, unable to tear her eyes away from the photos spread out like a deck of betrayal, looked disgusted. I stood firm, my voice steady but seething with anger. "I'm not just walking away, Bobby. I'll be demanding alimony and compensation for this treachery." Bobby's face lost all color, his earlier bravado evaporating into thin air. "You can't be serious," he stammered, his eyes darting between the damning photos and his mother, seeking refuge or rescue. Cynthia, ever the matriarch, tried to salvage what little control she thought she had. "Oh, please. She was never right for you. She would have cheated on you sooner or later. You're better off without her." But her words no longer had any effect. The truth was laid bare, and the facade of a happy family was shattered, leaving nothing but the remnants of lies and deceit. In the turmoil, Dylan reached his breaking point. His outburst shattered the tense silence, his voice reverberating through the room as he confronted his mother and brother. "I'm done with all of this," he declared, his glare searing as he looked directly at Cynthia and Bobby. "After everything you've put her through, just because of your skewed suspicions? I'm out." Cynthia's face twisted in shock and desperation. "Dylan, please. I was just trying to protect us," she pleaded, her voice shaky. "Protect?" Dylan's voice was thick with derision. "You call tearing us apart protection? I can't be part of a family that stands for such destruction. I'm moving. I need to start over, far from this chaos." I later shared the whole ordeal with my mother, who had been a pillar of strength throughout this nightmare. Her response was a mix of sorrow and resolve. "That's the consequence of Cynthia's actions," she said somberly. "Her arrogance has cost her deeply. Perhaps now she'll understand the damage she's caused." Dylan didn't just make empty threats. He followed through, relocating to start anew and distancing himself from the family drama. Meanwhile, Bobby was left to face the stark reality of the rift his mother's actions had deepened. An irreparable chasm now lay between him and his brother. As the initial shock subsided, my life began to gain a new form of clarity. It wasn't necessarily easier, but it was certainly clearer, as if I were viewing the world through a new lens. Many evenings were spent discussing the fallout with my mother, nestled on her comforting sofa, our conversations often outlasting the warmth of our tea. One such evening, I voiced my lingering doubts. "Mom, did I do the right thing? With the divorce, with how I handled everything with Cynthia and Bobby's?" She looked at me with a depth of understanding only years of life can bestow. "You stood up for what was right, for your dignity. That's far more valuable than staying in a relationship marred by distrust," she advised with quiet conviction. The change was profound for Dylan as well. He had moved to a new city, breaking away from the past that haunted him. His occasional calls were bittersweet, filled with the pain of separation and the hope of new beginnings. "I can't stay," he confessed during one call. "I need a fresh start, somewhere free from the shadows of these memories." I reassured him, "You'll always have my support, Dylan. You truly understood the turmoil and stood by me." His grateful laughter, though tinged with sadness, was a reminder of the bond we shared. "Take care of yourself," he said before we ended the call, a simple yet profound farewell. Months drifted by, and life settled into a new, steadier rhythm. My blog began to thrive, not just as a platform for health and fitness, but as a haven for sharing personal victories and the resilience needed to rebuild. The stories resonated deeply with my readers, more than I had ever anticipated. Then, unexpectedly, on a quiet afternoon, my phone lit up with a name from the past, Cynthia. My first impulse was to let the call go unanswered, to let it disappear into the void of voicemail. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and a faint hope of closure, I answered the phone. Cynthia's voice came through, shaky and tinged with what seemed like regret. "Marilyn, I was wondering, could I see him, my grandson?" The boldness of her request, after everything that had transpired, momentarily took my breath away. Memories of the accusations she had hurled in that tense living room scene flooded back, making her words feel even more audacious. "You've got some nerve, Cynthia," I responded, my voice steady yet firm. "After all the turmoil you caused, now you decide you want to play grandma? You weren't there for him before." Her voice broke into sobs, her apologies stumbling out between her tears, trying to stitch together some form of explanation. But I was beyond listening to excuses. "Save your tears, Cynthia. It's too late for sorry now." "But please, I just want to make things right," she pleaded, desperation seeping through her voice. I exhaled a deep, weary sigh. "You should have thought about that before you chose to act the way you did. Now you have to live with those choices," I told her coldly. Without waiting for her to respond, I ended the call. The click of the phone hanging up resonated like a gavel in a courtroom, marking the end of the trial. It felt harsh, perhaps, but it was necessary. For the first time in a long while, I felt a genuine sense of control over my life and boundaries. Turning to look at my son, now seemingly older and more perceptive than his years should allow, I felt reassured about our future. We had each other, and that was more than enough to forge a path forward, free from the shadows of the past. We were going to be okay, building a life shaped by our choices and free from unwanted drama.